Thank you for inviting me to talk to you tonight. What I'd like to say first is that I'm a complete amateur at this. So this was all new to me 5.5 years ago when a bit of land became available near where I live. And I decided it would be a nice project to spend my time doing wildlife photography, which was the initial thought. That project has now expanded quite significantly from what the original plan was, but to make use of the land that became available. So the title Chips with Everything refers to the wood chip on the path, because I've spent many an hour on my little mini digger putting in paths and spreading I don't know how many tons of wood chip across the land. And that's a continuous process that we keep going through. So that's why the talk's called Chips with Everything. And we've been through who I am. So I just want to show you where we are. This is Morpeth. This is Morpeth railway station here. And this is Cookies Lane that runs along here. This is Parkhouse Farm. And this is where the original 12 acres of basically, it's unusable farmland, too wet to farm. So I actually live on Parkhouse Farm. So I roll out of bed and I'm on the reserve. So it's been a very handy bit of land to have been able to use. And we've just expanded. So this is a close-up of the land itself. We've just expanded from the original 12 acres here to a further 6 acres, so it's just under 20 acres of land. The original design of the land of the reserve was around we've got this is young plantation area here, so this is all around about 20 years old of young plantation. We've got a couple of acres of marshy boggy area, and then this area here is reed bed. So there's about 6 acres of reed bed. So that was the original area of land. It was designed so that we had the hides up along the woodland edge here, and they're all facing north, so that you don't get the sun in the eye when you're in the hides. We've got a mature hedge line down the southern edge of the reserve, and we leave that completely untouched to allow a wildlife corridor for our residents. And this area here, this is a lane that runs up from Parkhouse Farm to the Ashington Road. So this is the expanded area. So we see now we've put a large pond in here, and this area here is now wet woodland and more mature woodland that's been added to the reserve. And that's work in progress because we haven't actually done anything with that area of land yet. So the woodland itself, the plantation area, is all broadleaf English trees. So we've got a lot of oak, ash, alder, willow, rowan, hazel, beech. There's quite a mixture of different types of woodland we've got there. And then, as I said, we've got the 2 acres of bog marsh, and then the 6 acres of reed bed. When I originally planned the site, I wanted to make sure that whatever I was doing wasn't going to have a detrimental effect on the land that we were using. So I tried to consult with the experts in the area. One of the biggest helps is David Noble-Rowland, who's worked, well, he was past secretary of this organisation, and also one of the architects of the Gosforth Park Reserve. I actually went to one of his camera classes, and that's how I met him. And he lived in Morpeth, so he was a handy guy to talk to and help me plan the reserve, and also set out a management plan for the next few years. Also David Thompson, who's an ecologist who works with, he works for Eco North, who work with the Northumberland Planning Authority. So again, he was a useful contact, and also Janet Fairclough from the RSPB came round and helped advise me on what we should and shouldn't be doing. And the boss, my wife, Libby, also, who's in the audience, so I better be careful what I say, has helped as well. So, why were we doing this? This area of land, we wanted to protect and conserve the actual wildlife that was already there. It's quite a nice mixed habitat there, so we have quite a nice variety of wildlife in there. And we want to try and increase the biodiversity on the site, and do whatever we can to enhance the habitat that's already there. And as a sort of secondary objectives were to provide a resource for local education, and other community groups within the Morpeth area and beyond, and also allow access for local residents and visitors to Morpeth. So it's done as a community project, so we don't charge for people coming on site or anything. So part of the motivation for the educational side was about 7 years ago, before the nature reserve existed, some local kids came in and set fire to the reed bed. And you can see the aftermath. There was virtually no reed left at all. And unfortunately, they set fire to it in the beginning of June. So there's a lot of migratory birds and animals, etc. in there. So we lost quite a lot of wildlife from that. So the thought was, if we could get the kids involved early, get them to understand what's there, then something like this might not happen, might make them think a little bit. So one of the first questions people ask is, "Are you Mr. Clark?" And I'm not Mr. Clark. So I did some research on the land and tried to find out why it was called Clarks Bog. And I went to the archives at Woodhorn in Ashington, and they've got a lot of documentation about land ownership in Northumberland. And I looked at the oldest maps I could find of the area, and this is one of the oldest maps I found, which was 1850. And you can see, it's called Clarks Bog then. Other interesting features there is there was a mill there, and actually a dam, which is called Old Dam, so it must have been there for a while before that. So, who was Mr. Clark, I was asking, and I again looked at the land registry stuff. And this chap here, George Howard, Earl of Carlisle, he owned a lot of land around the Morpeth area. And he started selling off some of this land in the mid-1850s, mid-1800s. And this particular piece of land was sold to a Mr. Clark in about 1849 for 2 shillings. So that's why it was called Clarks Bog. Why Mr. Clark wanted to buy a bog, I'm not quite sure. He had his reasons, I'm sure. So doing some of the research there, on the reserve, at the boundary of the original part of the reserve, there was a big line of trees that ran right across the bog. And when I was doing my little investigations there, I found there was railway sleepers that ran across the bog. And talking to the farmers that used to own the farm, they farmed the farm for 5 generations before they sold up. He was telling me that they used to quarry sand in some of the fields behind the farm, and they brought the sand across the bog, because the road that I showed you didn't exist at that point. And they had a railway siding for the farm, so they used to ship the sand up there. So that's why when you go there, you can actually see the sleepers that are still there across the bog. Also, I found out that during the war, they tried to drain the bog to create land for food production during the war. And that was done, but there was a prisoner of war camp nearby. I'm still not quite sure whether it is Italian or Ukrainian prisoners of war, but it was prisoners of war. They tried to drain that land. Fortunately, they didn't succeed, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you now. And also, during the war, they used that bit of land for experimental tracked vehicles. So there was a guy called Hobart who made these weird and wonderful bits of machinery that were used to go over obstacles on the beaches at D-Day, and this is where they tested some of those vehicles, because it's nice boggy land and it sort of simulated what they would see on the beaches. And then prior to the woodland going in, it was used for a bit of sheep and horse grazing. So just a couple of things that I found out. Now, I heard there was a geologist in the audience, so I better be careful what I say here, because I'm not a geologist. But I was asking the question, why is it a bog? And I found a geological map of the Morpeth area, and found that this substance here, alluvium, which is made up of clay and gravel and sand, compacted and solidified, is what's under the bog. And that seems to form quite an impermeable layer there. And this is a post-glacial feature. So the reserve sits on an alluvial channel. So if you look at the geological map, this sliver here of yellow is alluvium, and it almost perfectly matches the shape of the bog. So my limited amateur geology says that that's the reason why the bog is there. And the pink area there, which is most of Morpeth, is built on sand and gravel. So at some stage it might sink, I don't know. So I don't know whether the geologist wants to say anything about alluvium, but no. Okay. So what have we done on the land? We've put in a lot of paths between the hides and to create walkways for people. These follow the original deer tracks that were there, so we haven't actually created any new tracks. These are the tracks that were already there, created by our roe deer that are there, and you can see there's one actually on the track there. So they still like to use the path that we've got there. What I would say is that also we try to be as environmentally friendly as possible. So I would say more than 95% of the materials we've used are repurposed, salvaged, reused materials. So I spent many a time in skips and builder sites, and when they were building the Morpeth bypass, Carillion let me go and take my trailer up there, and I was up there twice a week pulling stuff out their skips to use. And it's amazing what they throw away. They did go bust, so that might be the reason. So this is a little store that we built out of pallets, and we use the reed, which makes really good insulation and screen for the walls. From the spoil we dug out the paths, we made an artificial badger set. So that's got chambers and tunnels in there. It's got a little camera port in the top there, and now in the bottom there you can see it's not really visible. We've now put some trees in there, so it's been in about 5 years now. We haven't had any badgers in yet, but I was watching Autumn Watch a little while ago, and they had some film of the first film ever of a badger giving birth. And the woman there was saying she'd had the set there for 7 years before the badgers took it up. So I'm still hopeful we'll get some badgers in there. But just to show we do have badgers on site. This is one of our local visitors that comes in, and he takes good interest in the camera. So they love the wood chip paths. It's obviously good feeding area for earthworms and things like that. So sometimes we come in the mornings and it looks like the Battle of the Somme along the paths because they just dug them up. This one's film of the badger. He found a bumblebee nest in the ground. So you can see the little bumblebees crawling around. So this is the second night. The first night is when he found it, and I found that he'd been digging there. And you can see he's actually taking the bee larvae. So that's what he's eating. People think it's honey, but it's actually the little larvae of the bees that it digs out. So you can see he's getting stung every now and then as it hops around. But it doesn't deter him. He keeps going. And they dig quite a hole. But he hops around. He does a little bit of a dance to avoid the bees. Okay. So then one of the local companies donated a double porta cabin. So we converted that into a classroom. So this was just putting the foundations in. And if you remember when I was saying that Morton's built on sand, when I was digging out for the foundations there, it was almost pure sand that you were digging out. So that might sink as well. One of our friends who's an artist did the drawings on the shutters just to make things like. So not to be outdone, I thought I'd do a bit on the outside and do my Jackson Pollock. So that's the camo that we've done for that. This is the first hive that we made. Again, it's all made out of pallets and old reclaimed timber. The sheeting here are the covers that go over the wagons at the DIY place to keep their loads dry, and it makes a good waterproofing course. And also the outside of it is made from my next door neighbour's decking. So we try and, like I say, use everything. And then the Princess Trust came in and gave it a little camo job there. We built a small, in front of that, we built a small amphibian pond. So that's home for our frogs, toads, newts. And you can see on the bottom here we've got the roe deer with 2 fawns. So they quite quickly come and investigate. And it's actually called Deer View Hide because the deer come around and feed around here. Some of the local residents, we've got the common frog, common toad, we get smooth newt and palmate newt as well, and then a variety of dragonflies and damselflies as well. Then in the centre of the reserve we've got what's called Woggle Water Pond. So that's a slightly larger pond that we made in the middle of the reserve. It's called Woggle Water because the local scouts helped me dig it. So this was all dug by hand over the winter of 2017, and that was hard work. But it's turned out quite nice. It's amazing how quickly nature naturalises things. These were some of the participants in digging the pond. They like to get stuck in, literally. This one here is, on this side is one of the scout leaders. And it took us a while to actually extract her from the middle of it. And it smells quite a bit. So she got out, went home, got changed, came back, and fell in again. So they're worse than the kids, the scout leaders. But they seem to enjoy themselves. And these are some of the local residents that we've got on there now. So we've got a moorhen family that have been on there for the last 4 or 5 years, and they've had youngsters each year. And again, we get quite a variety of dragonflies on that pond. Again, just to show use of materials, as you come onto the reserve, we want to put a screen in there to there's a bird feeding area to protect the bird feeding area from disturbance as people come onto the reserve. So we use a pallet fence basically filled with reed, and that makes a good screen, and it's also a good windproof as well. So that works quite well. Our claim to fame in the reserve is that we've got a prop from an episode of Vera. So they filmed an episode on the farm a few years ago. Series 7, episode 4, if you want to see it on YouTube. And in the episode, the hut was a migrant workers' hut, so it was full of bunk beds, etc. And managed to persuade the director to donate the hut to us when they'd finished filming. So they flat packed it for us in the corner here. So they took to bits, and then we carried it by hand across to the reserve, and we've rebuilt it and converted it into a hide. So that's the finished article there. And we put in glazed windows and full-length windows for wheelchair access and things like that. And then the final big project that we've had is putting in the larger pond. So this was in the middle of the reed bed, and we got a 12-ton dumper truck and a 12-ton excavator in to dig the pond. So they dug that pond in 3 days, but the dumper truck sank after a day and a half, so that had to get pulled out. And then the excavator sank after 3 days, so that had to get pulled out. So the actual land is basically, it's about a 2-foot mat of vegetation with liquid mud underneath. So once you break that mat, then they tend to disappear. So it makes for tricky digging. But again, that's this year, just about a year and a half after it was dug. It looks like it's been there for a long time, and that just filled up naturally within 3 days. It was full. There's no lining to it or anything like that. It's just the natural water table that we've got in there. And these are some of the local residents that have taken up occupancy of the pond. So I was really pleased that all the water birds that arrived on the pond had young. And like I say, the pond was less than a year old when these arrived. So we've got mallard, several broods of mallard, tufted duck, little grebe, and coot. We also had moorhen as well. There's 2 families of moorhen. And then our attraction, our latest arrivals were a pair of swans, which obviously were called Charles and Camilla. And they arrived in February of this year and had cygnets. And we know that they're all ringed. So the female came from Queen Elizabeth Pond, and she's 4 years old. And the male, Charles, he was born on Anisford Pond, and he's 5 years old. And they've been on in a pond at a local village, Hepscott, nearby, for the last 2 years. And then for some reason they've up sticks and moved over to Clarks Bog. So, if materials become available, then we never say no. There was an opportunity for some sand because they were putting in septic tanks in a local row of houses nearby, and there's this large pile of sand in the field, which I thought there must be something I can do with that. And we'd been down to Seal Sands and we'd seen some sand martin nesting areas there. So we thought we'd make our own little mini sand martin nest bank. So this is, if for those of you who don't know, the sand martin burrows into banks like this. So what you do is you put in drain pipes about 60 centimetres long, and they actually, you leave them full of sand, they burrow their way in and make a nest chamber at the end of that. So this was done this year, so it was just too late for the nesting season. So hopefully in the future we may get something in there. And that's just a picture of one of the sand martin. So we do get sand martin, swift, swallow, house martin over the pond feeding in the summer. And this is a hide that we put in place in front of the large pond, so that sits up high. What we also did was, because we've actually cleared a little land to put the hide in, as a sort of mitigation for our little furry friends, we put the dry stone wall in to give them some habitat back, and that seems to be fairly successful. So we've got banking field voles that live in that dry stone wall, so they pretty quickly occupy any habitat you give them. So, Chris can correct me here if I say anything I shouldn't do, but we do bird ringing regularly every month. I say we, not me, some of the bird ringers are here. I just do the scribing. So this is just some of the information on the birding that we've done. We have quite a nice population of tree sparrows, but there was a lack of nesting sites for tree sparrows because we've got just a young plantation area here. So when the birding started in 2017, there was not an awful lot caught. Then you see the peak here. This is because we put in a feeding station, so that attracted the tree sparrows in there. And then we put in, but there's no juveniles. So the blue line is adult and the red line is juveniles. We put in some bird boxes at this point here, and you can see that we then start to get juveniles. So we think there we're occupying the bird boxes that we provided. There's a flat line at the base here from October there, because again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but juveniles, once they have their first molt, you can't then class them as juveniles, so you can't say that they're juvenile, which is why you get that disappearance of them there. And then we added a further 50 boxes in 2019, and that was with the help of this organisation through the Dickens Trust. We got a grant, we got 50 bird boxes, which the University Wildlife Group helped put together and install them in the reserve. And you can see we have that increase in juveniles there. And then unfortunately we had the COVID, so that stopped. And it looks like there's a reduction in numbers, but what we think this is due to is that because we started putting feeding stations in further up the reserve, and also more bird boxes up the reserve, we've kind of had a dilution effect of the population across the whole site rather than just in the area where we had the original boxes and feeding station, which is why you get that apparent reduction in numbers there. So I know anecdotally from looking at the reserve that the tree sparrows have moved. We've got tree sparrows across the whole of the reserve now that we didn't have previously, and that's with the bird boxes going in. What will be interesting is in the future is to look at the new part of the reserve, which has got a lot more mature trees, and see how that population is with the new. And this is just blue tits and great tits, and they follow the same pattern basically as the tree sparrows. These are some willow tit boxes, so we do have willow tit on site, and they're on the endangered list, so we're trying to encourage them. There was a paper written a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, with a new design of bird box specifically for willow tits. And this is it. So we've made, I think we've got 3 on site that we're trying to encourage our willow tit population. But again, from what I believe, you don't get many to the acre, so you don't have large numbers. So you're not going to get sudden massive spike of population because they need a large area to survive in. And this is just some of our friends from the university putting together the boxes and putting up the boxes that we've got. So we've got over 100 bird boxes now of varying sorts on the reserve. Just some of the other things that we've put on the reserve. We put in various observation points so people can see what's going on. Lots of insect hotels. We've got the schools to help us put insect hotels in there. Very keen on my wood piles, so we have lots of wood piles in there, and we're going to increase that number. The lane that runs up alongside the reserve is a very popular dog walking route, so we've tried to keep our little poochy friends out because they do cause problems. And also Northumberland County Council have been doing free trees and things like that, so we put in over 150 metres of hedging, and there's probably another 150 metres to do up the lane. And also we've planted over 500 trees as well. We do have ash dieback on the reserve, which is an airborne fungal disease that's killing ash across the nation. So we are losing trees there, so we're trying to replace them with different species. Like I say, we've got 100 bird boxes, we've got bat boxes, owl boxes, squirrel boxes, and also we put in an otter holt. So I think it was about 3 months after putting the large pond in, on my trail camera I found an otter on the actual pond itself. So the reserve is actually connected to the Wansbeck. There's a little burn that runs all the way down to the Wansbeck, so we think that's how it's got up. So talking to my ecologist friend, he gave me a plan for an otter holt. So we've put that in. So that's what this is here. So there's 2 little tunnels, and there's a couple of chambers in here, living in a sleeping chamber there. That stump is actually a port for a camera, so I'll put a camera down. So this here is the first occupant of the otter holt, and it wasn't what I was expecting. So that is an American mink, which we didn't really want. And you can see in a minute he drags in one of the ducks off the pond. So he is no longer on the reserve. So, but they can cause a bit of damage on reserves. And there's later footage of him dragging in a rabbit as well. But he seemed quite content. So at least the otter holt has got some wildlife in. He seemed to have a bad paw as well. So. Couldn't do this without the volunteers that I've got. So we have had a lot of help from the Cub Scouts and Beavers. Princess Trust, before COVID, used to come in and we'd give them projects to do. Duke of Edinburgh had several people coming in to do their Duke of Edinburgh Awards in there. Josh and Thomas actually started in 2019. You normally do 3 months, I think it is, for the voluntary side of things. And they just finished this year as they went off to college. So they've been here with me for three years now, doing work. So they obviously enjoyed it, I hope. And then my regular volunteers, I've got 3 or 4 regular volunteers. And this is my right-hand man, John Bell. He helps me with all the construction stuff. And he's a ex-regimental sergeant major with the paratroopers, so he keeps me around. This is just some of the businesses that we've had help from. A couple I'd pick out of the Town and Country do all the wood chip for us. So we have a big dump on the corner of the reserve where they come and deliver wood chip for us without charging us, and also all the logs and things like that they provide as well. So they've been a big help for us. Hepscott Parish Council have provided us with a little bit of funding to do notice boards and some solar lighting because we haven't got any power on the reserve. RBB Group, he's actually our next door neighbour. He owns Shadford Farm, and he's helped us out with various things as well. And hopefully we'll do some stuff in the future. And obviously Dickens Trust helped us with the bird boxes. Donate Farm, they actually own the land, so I have a licence to use the land from them. And they have something called the leaf mark, which is linking environment and farming. So it's like a quality mark that they have with the supermarkets and things like that. So they get extra brownie points for having sort of managed wildlife area. So not only do they get a wrench, they get that as well. Just flick through a few pictures of the local residents that we get on site. So these are the tree sparrows. So for those who don't know how to recognise a tree sparrow, it's if you look at the cheek there, you've got the black diamond basically on the cheek. So that's how you tell a tree sparrow from a normal sparrow. We've got a resident doe, roe doe, and she's had fawns, kids on the reserve for the last 6 years. So she's had 10, I think, so far. So she's only a little thing, but she's done well. We do get red and grey squirrel on site. Variety of birds. We've got on the reed bed during the spring and summer. We've got a lot of warblers. So we've got reed warbler, willow warbler, grasshopper warbler, garden warbler, chiff-chaff, white-throat, lesser white-throat, black-cap, reed bunting. So they all come in. So it gets quite noisy there in the spring. We also have quite a population of pheasant. There's a shoot that happens nearby, so we get the ones that they miss. So you get lots of very nervous pheasant with PTSD from being shot. So they come in and usually hoover up all the food we put out. And it's again, because we've got the different habitats, we've got the bog, we've got the reed bed, we've got the woodland, we get, again, nice variety of insects. This one's one of my favourites, scorpion fly, which is quite common, but I think it's quite a cool insect. And some of our furry little friends, we've got quite a decent population of rodents. I'll pick out the water shrew at the top here. So we do get water shrew on the reserve. So that's the only UK mammal with a venomous bite. It's not going to do you any harm, but it does use it for its prey. And that was taken last year with the red squirrel feeding on we've got quite a lot of hazel around the perimeter of the reserve, so they're not actually resident on site, but they do come in for the hazel and the acorns. And we've got 5 buzzard, so we get up to 6 buzzard circling above the reserve. We get kestrel, sparrowhawk as well, and we also have a little. It's not a flock, is it? It's a wisp of snipe on the reserve. So they come in the autumn and spend time on the bog. Kingfishers now start to come to the large pond, so we've seen that quite a few times this year. There's our willow tit. You can see it's got a ring on its leg there, so that's one of the ring ones. Tawny owl, we get tawny owl in regularly. They hunt at night through the woodland area. And the spotted flycatcher, that's the first time we've seen it this year, so that was nice to see. And we also had marsh harrier here for, they only stayed for about 6 days, but it was quite exciting to see them arrive, and it looked like they were starting in a nest because they were bringing material in, but obviously this side it wasn't quite for them at the moment, so hopefully they might come back at some point in time. And water rail just arrived as well, so there's a few, I'm not sure how many, but you can hear them, but this one is a bit more of an exhibitionist and comes out quite regularly to feed in front of the hide. So nice to see, and then just a few videos of the other residents that we had. So we have fox regularly come through at night, interested in the camera. Caught on camera. Those of a gory don't like gory things, then look away now. This is a buzzard on the feeding ramp, and that's got a rat, and the magpie in the background waiting for leftovers. But nice birds. And this is so that's the roe deer. So this is last year. She had triplets. This year she's only had one, so I think she's having a rest. But they're quite cute. I hadn't realised until I started this project that roe deer. We didn't realise she had triplets till about maybe 6-8 weeks after she'd actually produced them, because they tend to stash them in different places around the reserve. And what else I've read is that they don't have a scent when they're first born, which is why she goes and puts them in different places, so predators can't smell them. So if they were with her, the predator would smell her and know where they were. So it's happened quite a few times where we think she's only got one, but she's actually got 2, and this time it was 3. So this is them in February of this year. So this is her with the 3 boys, and they're all looking very fit and healthy. So she's done well to bring all 3 up like that. So nice to watch. This is it's an owl, tawny owl. It's got a shrew on the table there, and it doesn't last long. Gone in one gulp. You can see that again. We have had long-eared owl as well last year. It appeared, and it just sat in the same spot for about 6 days in a row. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the sun out, and it was just in exactly the same spot. Not sure why, but it was nice to see. Just a few numbers there of what we see from a stat point of view. But, we've been getting moth surveys done this year, so they're up to 188 species so far. But like I say, it helps that we've got quite a diverse habitat in just quite a small area. So if there's anyone out there who wants to do entomology survey or plant survey, botanical survey, then there's something that would be interesting to have done. Just a few of the groups that are using the reserve. We're trying to spread the net as widely as possible. Collingwood School comes in 3 times a week. The other schools come in on a regular basis. We've got arrangement with the Mental Health Trust, St George's Hospital, so some of their patients come in just to spend a bit of time, sort of chill out, because it's a nice relaxing, calming atmosphere there. Various walking groups, and obviously the bird ringing group as well. what we're planning over the next few years, we need to pond maintenance because it's amazing how quickly stuff grows in. We're putting another island on the pond because the swans are dominating the island that we did put in. So we're putting a second island in. We've got to put in paths to the new area of the reserve. We're going to put in another pond at that end. Try and make a little area for waders on the big pond. And also someone donated their fossil collection. So in part of the reserve we're making a fossil pit so the school kids come in and uncover the fossils in a sand pit basically. So I think I'm probably past my time because this was just a little video tour of the bog. So shall I we can post that online at a later date. Pardon?
How long is the video?
It's about 4 minutes. What do you want? Yeah, okay. Yeah, just give you an idea of if we can see. This is in my little electric truck. So I've swapped my digger for an little electric buggy. Oh, there's the boss. So we've got the screening area there with the bird feeding area behind there. So we've got these paths we had to widen a little bit, so I'm getting my buggy up in there. But we had to, before this, we had to wheelbarrow everything up and down. So from paving slabs to wood chip was all done by hand barrow. So at least this has got a tippy back in it, so we can actually move things around a little bit more efficiently, especially when we get on a bit. There's a bit of storm damage from Storm Arwen. We've got quite a few trees that have been sort of knocked over. We've got some observation areas on the left looking over the reed bed. Because the observation areas look east, so if you're a morning person, it's nice to see the sunrise over the reed bed. Some little individual hides that we've made out of pallets with the kids. We've got information boards of what you might see. And more log piles either side that we put in. There's a chicken coop here that someone's donated that we're converting into a little duck housing area. And then this is going into the actual hide in front of the big pond. So the area at the back is called Dunce's Houses, so this is called Dunce's Corner hide. And that's looking out onto the pond. And then that looks out onto the San Martin nest bank and the odd halt. And this is the lads from the Duke of Edinburgh Ward did the seating area, and then we've got a ride through the reed bed. So a couple of reasons for doing that. One is to show the kids what it's like inside the reed bed, and also we put the nets up there for bird ringing. We're talking to other wardens of marshes, and they say the more edging you've got, the better, because that's where the animals feed. This is another individual hide. So if you cut rides through the reed, then that's good for the wildlife, because they feed along those edges. So you can see the trees here are about 20 years old, so they're fairly immature. It's another one of my volunteers. This is Vera's shed. And we've got a little observation point there, so you can sit and look over the ponds and towards the reeds. That's an interesting feature that the reed bed just stops in a straight line. We don't quite know why. We haven't done that. It's not cut like that. It's just it just stops in a straight line. And then either side of here we've got little animals that we've made, and it's a nature trail. So we put facts about the different animals on there, and the kids do a little quiz as they come up the main path there. This is going into where Deerview Hide is, so busy renovating this area as well with the kids from the school. that's a path to the pond. If anyone remembers Applebee's bookstore in Morpeth, when it shut down, we used all the shelving inside to line the hide there. And just see a pheasant going across there, but there's actually a young deer there underneath that willow tree. And that actual willow tree was basically a stump that I put in as a perch for the birds, and it's groomed. This is the classroom, so we've got various things in there for the kids to look at. So that's your very quick tour of Clarks Bog. We did a bit of work with Northumberland Tourist Board. They've got a website called Discover Our Land, so they do various sites around Northumberland, and there's a little video of Clarks Bog on that. And there's also, I've got a blog which you can go along and visit, and that's got various bits of information and more pictures and various stories of what happens on the bog from a day-to-day basis. And that's me finished.